I think one of the most common reasons people decide to move and live in Costa Rica is for its awesome weather. The weather in Costa Rica typically is going to be mild and moderate no matter where you live at, and it's very consistent. Regardless of whether you live way up in the mountains like I do, or if you choose to live at the beach, the temperature where you settle at normally will not vary more than about 20 degrees from the coldest part of the day to the hottest part of the day. Costa Rica really only has two seasons, and that's what's commonly known as the rainy season and the dry season, what the locals call winter and summer. Now that kind of throws us off because when we think of winter, well, we're thinking of frost, snow, ice, and in Costa Rica, you're never going to find that unless you happen to go all the way up to Mount Charapo. Mount Charapo is Costa Rica's tallest peak, and so the temperatures can dip down to 30 degrees and you can find ice in the water up there. However, nobody's living on Mount Charapo. So where you choose to live at, you really can enjoy some awesome weather. There is a lot of misinformation about the weather in Costa Rica. Unfortunately, when you're trying to find out exactly when is rainy season, when does rainy season begin? When does it end? Should I visit Costa Rica in the rainy season? Is it going to rain so much that it's just going to ruin my vacation? Well, since I've lived in Costa Rica for over 10 years, and not just lived in one place, I've traveled and lived all over Costa Rica. And I've talked to the locals. I know Costa Rica. And so today's video, I'm going to debunk a bunch of misinformation and really explain to you what rainy season is like, dry season, and help you to understand the best time to visit Costa Rica and, well, whenever you decide to move and live in Costa Rica, what you can expect from the weather in Costa Rica. Right, before we get started, make sure to watch the video all the way to the end because I've inserted some really neat Costa Rican footage at the end that I think you'll enjoy. So let's get on the topic of today, which is, hey, really talking about, well, the Costa Rica weather. When is rainy season? And unfortunately, you do get a lot of bad misinformation. And let me just quickly explain why that is. You see, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where anybody and everybody can say whatever they want to, and they can put it on the internet. They can say it on YouTube. And just because they say it don't mean it's true. Unfortunately, you have a lot of YouTubers out there that just throw up information and they're traveling all over the place and they throw up information simply for content. They just want the views. The more views they get, the more they might possibly get paid, and they really don't care whether it's factual or not. And so they might do some real quick research. They don't even live in Costa Rica, and then they're regurgitating the trash and the wrong information that they see on Google. The same thing goes for tourists. They come down here and they've only been here for a little while and they just automatically assume that what they've heard from other people or some of the locals is correct. And you're thinking, well, if I really want to know what the rainy season is, just ask a local. Surely he knows when rainy season is, and that's true to an extent. But here's what you have to understand. For the majority of the locals in Costa Rica, they live in one place. Wherever they're born, that's where they live. They're very family oriented. They don't travel around very much, and they definitely don't live in several different places. So, Costa Rica has a lot of microclimates. And if you ask a Tico, hey, what is the rainy season? And he tells you it's 9 months, well, he's not lying to you because he's possibly living in a microclimate. And you know what? Where he's living at, it indeed is 9 months out of the year. Rebecca and I have moved all over the place. And in two different cases, we lived where there was some microclimates. One microclimate was over in the Rivas area, over by San Isidro, and indeed, it rained there 9 months out of the year. It was a microclimate. Well, we now live way up here at 4,750 feet. It has a microclimate, and so it's a little bit different. It typically does the usual, but it begins raining a little sooner, sometimes rains a little later. So it's important to understand that if a local tells you, well, he's telling you based on where he lives at. And so if you're going to live where he lives at, well, you can count that as being correct. But today I'm going to tell you based on our experience what it typically is. I'm going to give you the facts, okay? So here's some things that you really want to keep in mind. For most of Costa Rica, what I'm going to tell you is going to be correct, okay? While there are some places that will differ a little bit, for the most part, it's going to be what I'm going to tell you. There are supposedly 12 microclimates in Costa Rica, but I always wonder, who counted those microclimates? Because I can bet you whoever counted those microclimates didn't come up here where I live at the end of the world, because I know there's nothing up here, but there is a little microclimate. So you have to understand how these microclimates work and how they're affected and why they're called microclimates to fully understand why it actually changes the weather patterns in small areas of certain places in Costa Rica. So you want to keep that in mind. And also, Costa Rica is a small country. So if you went from the northern part of Costa Rica around Guanacaste, you're going to find that generally it's a little hotter there. And then the further south you go, it's going to be, well, let me back that up. Over in Guanacaste, when I say a little hotter, that's not factual. What's factual is it's a little drier up there, which means in the summertime, well, you'll see a lot of grass turn brown. As you get further down south, all the way down to the border of Panama, well, you're going to find that it's greener, and a lot of that has to do with because there's more jungles, less deforestation, and so it's not wetter so much, but it is greener. But because it has more forest and jungles, that is a reason why it gets a little more rain, okay? So let me go ahead and break this down, but before I do, if you're interested in coming to Costa Rica, it's because of all this misinformation is the reason that I started doing Costa Rica relocation retreats about a year ago. I teamed up with two other great people that have been living in Costa Rica for years and who give good information. And that's the reason we put on these relocation retreats. And another one is coming up real soon. And they're selling out fast. So, you know, I've talked to so many different people about relocation retreats. Matter of fact, spoke to a guy just a couple days ago. It said, hey, I was up at this relocation retreat, and I just felt like they gave good information, but I felt like they kept pushing you to buy more. It was driven around buy more, sell more, buy more, sell more. And, you know, I got information, but I just felt like pressured to buy stuff. So that's the number one rule that we have. We have experts that come talk to you and educate you, but they're never allowed to sell you anything. Our whole goal about the relocation retreat is to give you all of the information that you need to make a good definitive decision and say, honey, Costa Rica would be an awesome place to live. Or, you know what, we should continue researching and find out if there are better alternatives. So after a week of being here, you'll know without a doubt whether Costa Rica is right for you or not, without anyone trying to sell you a single thing. So check out the link in the description below so that you can get the facts about living in Costa Rica. So let's get back to the weather in Costa Rica. If you've lived here in the last 2 years of Costa Rica, you really don't know what the weather in Costa Rica is like, because the last 2 years we have gone through what is known as El Nino and La Nina. Well, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what that is, but what I do understand is it changes the normal weather patterns drastically. In the first year, I think, which was El Nino, which was 2 years ago, we got so much rain that it actually broke the records for as long as Costa Rica has been keeping records on the amount of rain. It flooded in so many different areas, and in Jaco, where it's very popular, the streets there flooded crazy, okay? So that was because of El Nino. Well, this past year, we've got La Nina. Well, La Nina tends to be the opposite of El Nino, and so this year, we almost had no rainy season, and it was dry the majority of the time. Matter of fact, the rice farmers didn't even plant rice because they knew that because of El Nino getting too much rain, we was going to have La Nina. They didn't even plant the rice because they knew they wouldn't get enough water for their fields, and they were right. Those fields were brown, dry, and empty. They put cattle there instead of rice. So if you've been here the last 2 years and you talk to someone and they're telling you about the weather, well, they're going to be wrong. So here, let me tell you what typically is normal for Costa Rica. Been here over 10 years. The first 8 years, it was the normal weather season. Typically, the rainy season is going to start in May. It's going to go to October. It's normally 6 months of rain, 6 months of dry season. So you can expect May, June, July, August, September, October going to be rain. Now, it's not going to rain like crazy, and it's not going to rain a whole lot to where you can't enjoy Costa Rica. Matter of fact, you'll find out when you talk to the locals and you talk to the people that's been living here, they prefer the rainy season to the dry season, okay? So here's what typically happens. Usually you have a transition period that kind of starts the last couple of weeks of April to the first couple of weeks of May, where it goes from having no rain at all to it begins to sprinkle a little bit, and it'll rain a little bit more, rain a little bit more. So in May, where you'll get a little bit of rain and some dry, well, then the very next month it rains a little more, the next month a little bit more, and it progressively gets more and more rain until you get September, October, where typically that is the hardest rain. October typically is where it's just you get a pour of rain, and even in October you typically have these beautiful, beautiful mornings, and it's usually beautiful until around noon, and then it might start raining, and sometimes in October it might actually start raining around 10 o'clock, but October is the only time that you get a lot of rain, okay? So if you're worried that the rain might ruin it, well then don't come in October. But typically, it's nice even then, okay? So understand that it starts around May, it will end in October, but it transitions typically, it will transition the last, the first couple of weeks of November. This year, we had an event, a relocation event, right there in October. So the first 3 days, it rained and rained and rained and rained in October, but man, November 1st, it was almost as if someone flipped a switch in the clouds, and then when November 1st came, the next 3 days, we got hardly any rain. I mean, just a couple of little sprinkles, and it felt like summer already. So while that could kind of be a little coincidence, typically that's what happens. When the rainy season goes, you can in all the different places that Rebecca and I lived at, we could almost set our watch on when it was going to rain, because every day it would be just beautiful weather. Rebecca would hang the clothes up outside during the morning so it would dry, but at 2 o'clock, it was going to rain. And so, almost always right there, 1:30, 2:30, it was going to begin raining. And then it would only rain a couple of hours sometimes, 30 minutes sometimes. Sometimes it would rain till dark and it would stop. Hardly ever. Now, that's really rare for you to wake up and it's raining in the morning. Now, sometimes that does happen occasionally, but if it's raining in the morning, that's typically going to be because there's some sort of weather pattern nearby, and it's very unusual, okay? Costa Rica has never, ever had a hurricane hit the country. They've come close by, and so when those hurricanes come close by and we're getting that rain from them, well, it might rain in the morning. We might get a little more rain than usual, okay? But typically, you can almost set your watch by it. Hey, here it is. Look, it's lunchtime. Oh, it's starting to cloud over. Yep, 2 o'clock, it's going to start raining. Rains for a short time, maybe a couple hours, maybe till dark, and be done. So rarely does it rain in the morning. Rarely does it rain in the evening. Of course, keep in mind, depending on if you're living in a microclimate like where I'm at, it's still 6 months and 6 months for us. However, because we're at 4,750 feet, the clouds usually start sooner because we're way up in the mountains. And it's still kind of, we'll get some rains a little earlier, and sometimes the rains will rain a little bit later and sometimes into the night. But that's just because of the microclimate we're in, okay? For most of the places that we've lived when we're all over Costa Rica, it's the same. In the dry season, it's the same thing. That dry season usually begins, the latter part of November, the last couple of weeks, all the way up through April. And it's almost as if someone turns off a switch. I mean, it's like a giant umbrella, because it's like the rains just stop. Hardly ever, and it's not like it's not going to rain for 6 months. In the first couple of months, you'll get a little scattered showers here and there, but you're not going to get the typical rains that you do during rainy season. Most of the time, it quickly shuts off. You get these little tiny rains, but then it starts drying up, drying up, drying up, drying up. And then the last about 3 months, let's see here, you got November, December, January. Those 3 months and some of February is typically when the majority of the tourists come in. February, March, April. March and April is really the hottest part of the season. And so if you live in areas like Guanacaste will dry up really quick. But Guanacaste is flat. As you go down toward San Vito, in the areas or in the middle of the country where there's mountains and trees, my grass hardly ever turns brown, okay? And so if I don't water it, well, yeah, I can see that it will begin to dry up. Of course, I water all my stuff. But my point is, most places, the grass will tend to stay green, except for maybe a couple of months in the driest or hottest part of the dry season, okay? And so still, the temperature stays pretty much the same regardless. So no matter where you live at, if you live on the beach, whether it's the rainy season or the dry season, the temperatures are not going to change a whole lot. Once you live there, you can pretty much know that, hey, you get used to this comfortable environment. It's pretty much going to be the same, while it might vary just a little bit. It might get a little bit hotter in the summertime, a little bit cooler in the winter. It doesn't change a lot. I know for us, living way up here in the mountains, we wake up in the morning, it's typically 59 to 60 degrees. Got a thermometer right by my bed so I can monitor it. I'm a little crazy that way. But it's typically 59, 60 degrees in the morning. Hottest part of the day, which is usually around 10, 11, maybe 12 o'clock, it might be 80 degrees, but I'm never in the sun unless I'm working, and I usually have these nice cool breezes. It doesn't even feel like 80 degrees. But it stays within that 20-degree area. And I find the same thing is true whenever I'm down in Estorils. We lived there several times on the beach. And, I can't remember what the temperature was, but it never varied very much. It was within that 20, 25-degree range, okay? But going back to enjoying Costa Rica, if you're going to come visit Costa Rica, what is the best time to come visit? Well, really, any time is a great time to visit Costa Rica. I mean, even in October when it's raining a whole lot, well, we had our event and we scheduled to go zip lining and waterfall rappelling, and about 2 o'clock, it started raining. But you know what? It wasn't cold rain. Matter of fact, it was a comfortable rain. And it actually made the zip lining so much more fun because that water was kind of like grease on the cable. And so we had a blast. Now, the unfortunate thing is we couldn't go waterfall rappelling because so much water had come down in the last few days that the waterfall was too dangerous. So we were able to schedule it because, like I told you, it was like everything shut off come November. And so the waters quickly ran off. They were able to go waterfall rappelling. So, really, when you come to Costa Rica, any time is a great time to go to Costa Rica. It's not a bad place. The temperatures are comfortable, and you really can enjoy life in Costa Rica. And that's everything that you need to know about Costa Rica weather. Rainy season is not bad at all. It's preferred by most, and I know for Rebecca, as soon as it starts raining, she's like, it's time for a nap. Living in Costa Rica can be an amazing experience. It's kind of like living on vacation. If you're curious about living in Costa Rica, want to know more information, check the link below. You can click on that link and you can schedule a free 20-minute phone consultation. We'd love to talk to you, give you some ideas, answer some questions about life in Costa Rica. I hope you'll join us for the next Costa Rica relocation event right around the corner. Check the link in the description below. I'd love to see you there, and be sure to hang out because in just a second you're going to see some amazing footage of awesome stuff in Costa Rica.